Welcome back, people weeples. Hopefully, no longer sheeples. So, wife's in there watching Left Behind Part 3 or something like that. Um, I haven't sat down and watched any of these things, but I went and saw a few minutes of it. Enough to realize there's something very peculiar going on with those movies. They happen to be very similar to the story that I'm telling you. Black President, Russian Antichrist. Everybody's fucked. And they don't even really know it. So, here's some things to consider, especially if you think what I just said is ridiculous. Number one, after 9/11, do you remember how within about, well, I believe it was a 3 month period, we lost most of our major news anchors and they were just replaced with other guys? A lot of them looked like the guys they replaced. They're just generic looking guy, which JQ, this guy with a voice. I mean, I know some of them were getting old, but really, all of them at once at such an auspicious time, right after we invaded Iraq. So, another auspicious time frame is right after the Cold War ended, wouldn't it be? Especially if, as flat Earth theorists point out, there's clearly some sort of media deception, mass hysteria, possibly a propaganda war, maybe, going on? Hmm? Possible? Maybe, perhaps? Eh? Yeah. Well, see, in the early 90s, sitcoms, entertainment as a whole, stopped having any need to be wholesome. Didn't need to be any morals as long as it was okay. And sure, you had basic, make you feel good kind of moral stories, but nothing like you really had in some of the 80s sitcoms. So, if you were, say, one of these famous people before the early 90s, when, and also in the early 90s, it did seem kind of like that was the point at which you had to sell your soul just to get on TV, where it seemed like everybody in the mainstream entertainment arena wasn't quite right. Too hedonistic, too generic, too something. And gradually, this field of information, this broad spectrum of subtle attacks on true Christianity, well, it did its job. But we can still trace it back. You can still just kind of make sense of it. And those people who are in those sitcoms, well, they're still alive. Those stars from the 80s that by the 90s you didn't hear about anymore. the ones who didn't sell their souls, a lot of them are still alive. You might notice they've made some movies. Nobody really fucking watches them. Interesting. So if you were one of these people, and you and your friends together, I mean, when Christians work together, they become friends. If you're a Christian, you know that. Especially if you're a real Christian and there's other real Christians. Someone I can trust. Someone I can count on. For you non-Christians, that's true. For you fake Christians, that's true. You should try becoming a real Christian sometime. It's awesome. Things make sense for a change. Not just aha moments that justify paranoia. I'm talking about things in general making sense. So, if you and your friends, thereby cementing your witness because your friends had also experienced together an infiltration of the media industry right during the fucking so-called collapse of the Cold War. And you and your friends caught on to this. And you and your friends being in the media business would be familiar with, say, some underrated documentaries. Because, well, let's face it, people who are on sitcoms don't go around watching many sitcoms. They're usually people who like to be educated. Actors used to be people who like to be educated. You needed to be educated so you could play as many different roles as you could, effectively and accurately. Not dumb people, most actors. Especially not back in the 80s. But if you were one of them, say alive in 2005, for instance, when that one came out, or 2000, 2002, I think was the other ones that came out. My mom gave them to me, and I never watched them. I never even took the shrink wrap off of them. I think they're on. I think a couple of them are on VHS. My kids have a VHS player, but I don't. Anyway, but say you knew what was going on, and you had a limited ability to still make a movie or two. What would you do with those movies? If you were a true Christian, if you were willing to give your life to help humanity, what would you do with that last little breath of fame that you had? Well, those people that were in family ties, various other sorts of crap that I can't remember. Family Ties being the one that several of the Left Behind actors are from. You'd make a movie or a series of movies that reached directly to the people you hoped had the most hope within them, that is, your fellow Christians. And you'd try to convey as much of that intelligence, as much of that conspiracy, as much of that dark future as you could. Well, that's what the Left Behind movies are. From what limited little part I saw, there was Russian Antichrist, there was Black President, and this is 2005. And everybody was fucked and clueless. We're not far from being fucked. Y'all are definitely clueless. A little help, please? A little help. Like and subscribe. Stay tuned. I'm going to go drag my wife away from the TV and we're going to do a Yugoslavia review. Because if the Cold War ended, then the status quo of history of Yugoslavia, well, shit, it still shouldn't be fine. Because if you just watch the damn documentaries, man, there's no way the Cold War ended. But if you watch our documentary, you'll at least understand why people are bullshitted that the Cold War ended. Stay tuned. Peace. It's not stay tuned. It's fake TV. Fake TV. So, find the fucking thing or whatever and click on it. Yeah.